Christian Horner returns to Red Bull. Shocking news just announced by the team, leaving the entire Formula One world stunned after Red Bull's poor results in Belgium. Want to know if he'll be leading the team at the next Hungarian Grand Prix? Curious about his new salary? If you're interested in all of this, stay until the end. This video is for you. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. In the immediate aftermath of an emotionally devastating and professionally catastrophic weekend at Spa-Francorchamps, a circuit where legends are made and reputations are obliterated, Red Bull Racing found itself exposed in a way that hadn't been seen in over half a decade. Gone was the aura of invincibility. Gone was the fear they once instilled in rivals before the lights even went out. Instead, what remained was the wreckage of two error-ridden, confidence-shattering performances from Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda that left the paddock stunned and the garage eerily silent. Verstappen, usually the clinical assassin of Sunday domination, looked erratic, disconnected, and visibly frustrated as he fumbled through strategy misfires, poor tire management, and uncharacteristic driving mistakes. Tsunoda, for his part, delivered a chaotic race filled with inconsistent braking, radio tantrums, and a pace deficit so large it sparked rumors of immediate replacement. The fallout was nuclear. The post-race debrief was described by insiders as a funeral in slow motion. Senior engineers refused to make eye contact. Analysts spoke in hushed tones. Mechanic crews disbanded early. In the executive suite above the paddock, the response wasn't just concern, it was pure panic. The Red Bull empire, so meticulously constructed over years of dominance, was unraveling by the hour. Their main rival, McLaren, had outmaneuvered them in every department. Mercedes, though still unstable, smelled blood in the water. Ferrari's internal chaos suddenly looked almost calm compared to the unspoken disarray engulfing Red Bull Racing. And in the midst of that chaos, an extraordinary phone call was placed. Late Sunday night, while most of the grid's elite were either asleep or drowning their sorrows in a hotel bar, Helmut Marko, the team's hardened architect, kingmaker, and perpetual puppeteer, made a direct, encrypted call that bypassed all official Red Bull Racing communication lines. It was not a message of strategy or review. It was a plea. A calculated, desperate act to summon back the one man who, despite being buried under months of scandal, whispers, and corporate exile, still commanded loyalty, fear, and above all results. Christian Horner. Yes, the same Horner who had been forced to walk away amid a storm of controversy and intra-team warfare. The same Horner who had been painted by certain factions within the Red Bull boardroom as expendable, outdated, and ultimately replaceable. Now, just weeks later, that narrative had disintegrated into ash. Red Bull didn't just want Horner back, they needed him. Marko's message, according to multiple insiders with direct knowledge of the call, was startling in its vulnerability. He didn't waste time with flattery or corporate buzzwords. His words were reportedly as sharp as they were honest. We are collapsing. You're the only one who can stop it. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. And Horner? He didn't gloat. He didn't demand apologies. He didn't even hesitate. He said yes. But the terms of his return were anything but familiar. This wasn't the triumphant return of a fallen king with conditions and fanfare. This was a re-entry fueled by necessity, tension, and pure crisis management. The financial package offered to Horner was drastically reduced. From a previous annual compensation that hovered around the $12 million mark, complete with private bonuses, image rights, and championship incentives, Horner was offered a base salary of just $3.5 million. No bonuses. No private jets. No automatic renewals. It was, by all accounts, a symbolic figure. A figure that screamed, "This isn't about the money anymore." And Horner, in a move that stunned even his harshest critics, accepted immediately. He didn't negotiate. He didn't counter. He didn't ask for amendments to legal clauses or media control. He simply agreed. Because what was on the table wasn't a paycheck, it was the legacy of the empire he built. And he wasn't about to let it die on someone else's watch. Within 24 hours, the news leaked, but not officially. No press release. No dramatic team announcement. Just subtle, quiet changes. Senior staff were informed internally. Access passes were reissued. Horner's encrypted credentials were reactivated across Red Bull's private telemetry network. And by Tuesday morning, he was back in the factory, dressed not in a tailored PR outfit but in a simple Red Bull polo, sleeves rolled up, eyes scanning every screen with surgical intensity. His first move was to convene a confidential summit, not in a conference room, but inside the simulator control center, where strategy meets reality. No executives. No sponsors. Just drivers, engineers, and his core inner circle. For over 4 hours, they dismantled every corner of the Spa weekend. Horner didn't shout. He didn't point fingers. He asked questions. He listened. Then he issued one single command: from this moment forward, everything changes. And it already has. Rumors are now swirling that a complete reshuffling of Red Bull Racing's technical leadership is underway. Several senior aerodynamicists have been put on review. 2 strategic consultants brought in post-Horner are expected to be dismissed. Driver coach positions are being reconsidered. Verstappen's camp, once distancing itself from the turmoil, is reportedly relieved and energized by Horner's presence. One source close to the Dutch driver said, "Max only trusts a handful of people in this paddock. Christian is at the top of that list." Tsunoda, on the other hand, may not survive the coming wave. With Horner back, the ruthless pursuit of performance will no longer be hindered by corporate politicking or external distractions. Driver decisions, car setups, weekend protocols, everything is under review. No one is untouchable. No role is guaranteed. And the paddock can already feel the shift in energy. Horner's return has sent a message not just to his team, but to every garage, media outlet, and rival principal across the F1 grid. Red Bull is not done. The fight is just beginning. The storm may have shaken the walls, but the general is back, and the war room is active. It remains to be seen how long Horner's second reign will last. Whether it ends in redemption or another political coup, no one knows. But one thing is undeniable: he has returned not to play it safe, not to manage decline, and certainly not to fade quietly into the background. He's come back to win. To re-establish authority. To drag Red Bull out of the abyss and place it back at the top, by force if necessary. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. And the grid, once used to fearing the logo on the Red Bull car, now fears something far more dangerous: the fire behind the man who refuses to be erased. When do I start? That was his answer. No counteroffer. No conditions. No demands for negotiation. Just 3 words, delivered with icy certainty and total control. But behind that deceptively simple question was a storm of consequences already brewing beneath the surface. Because this wasn't just a job offer. This was an ultimatum. A high-risk, no-nonsense, pressure-loaded return to the front lines of Formula One warfare. And Red Bull wasn't extending a casual invitation. They were throwing down a gauntlet. The message from the upper echelons of Red Bull GmbH was unambiguous. The brand, the image, the empire comes first. Not personal indulgences. Not media flirtations. Not public drama. This is an organization that trades in global domination, thrives on razor-sharp branding, and defends its public image with militant precision. The energy drink giant had tolerated turbulence for months. Political storms in the paddock, internal frictions among senior leadership, viral headlines that had nothing to do with racing, but all of that tolerance had a limit. And Horner was now standing at the very edge of it. His marching orders were direct and unforgiving: zero tolerance for reputational risk. Red Bull's badge must remain spotless. Its corporate sheen must be polished to perfection. And if even a whisper of scandal, real or rumored, threatened that fragile image, Horner would be removed without ceremony, without payout, without warning. It didn't matter if the accusations were founded or speculative. Perception was reality, and the corporation's bottom line would not tolerate distraction. He listened. He nodded. No protest. No defensiveness. Just a quiet, chilling acceptance of the stakes. And he didn't wait to ease in. Within 24 hours of shaking hands and sealing his return, Christian Horner touched down at the Red Bull Racing campus in Milton Keynes. Not as a man seeking reconciliation, but as a commander marching into hostile territory to clean house. He didn't schedule meetings. He didn't offer greetings. He walked straight into the operations center and started flipping over every stone he could find. There was no time for nostalgia. No room for sentiment. This was war. His first act was swift and ruthless: a forensic, unsparing audit of the team's mechanical and technical execution, particularly in race-critical scenarios. Pit stops, tire rotations, car releases, wing adjustments, fueling precision. Everything. No area was off-limits. He summoned the head of trackside operations and demanded complete footage and time-stamped breakdowns of every pit stop across the last 8 Grand Prix weekends. Every angle, every error, every tenth lost, every wheel gun delay, every radio miscommunication, every minor hesitation that had resulted in lost track position. He sat through the replays personally. He requested frame-by-frame playback. Not once, not twice, over and over. Watching, dissecting, analyzing. And when the patterns began to emerge, sloppy rear-left changes in high-pressure scenarios, suboptimal release calls during safety car periods, fatigue-induced errors in double-stack stops, he made his move. There was no committee vote, no performance review, no last chance. Over 40% of the pit crew was dismissed on the spot, fired for what was termed systemic unreliability and competitive inconsistency. These weren't interns or junior hires. These were seasoned professionals, many of whom had been with the team since its championship heights. It didn't matter. Loyalty wasn't enough. Horner demanded perfection, or as close as humanly possible to it. And in his view, the old guard had become complacent. Operational sharpness had dulled. The hunger was fading. So he cut them loose. Their replacements didn't come from traditional recruitment. Instead, he tapped into Red Bull's internal elite performance reserve, a curated list of high-performing specialists from Red Bull's broader ecosystem. Engineers on loan from Red Bull powertrains. Mechanics from the Alpha Tauri Skunkworks program. Pittsburgh lane tacticians groomed through RB's rapid deployment simulation labs. These weren't ordinary hires. They were vetted, hardened, and trained in environments where the margin for error was literally zero. And Horner didn't stop there. He ordered a full reprogramming of the race day telemetry redundancy systems. Backup protocols were restructured. Communication chains were shortened. He had every headset and internal radio channel reviewed for latency, clarity, and technical lag. He even demanded dual verification alerts for tire selection before launch, an additional safeguard designed to prevent strategic chaos during unexpected weather transitions. And when some staff pushed back, claiming that such measures were excessive, Horner didn't argue. He simply replaced them. By the end of his first week back, over 24 strategic and logistical protocols had been rewritten from the ground up. Old habits were burned. Performance benchmarks were redefined. A new chain of command was installed, one that reported directly to Horner, bypassing middle management. The days of layers and buffers were over. Every race decision, every personnel rotation, every micro-adjustment was now being funneled through one central node, his desk. Inside the paddock, rival teams were stunned by the sheer brutality of the transformation. Some called it overkill. Others saw it as a desperate attempt to cling to authority. But insiders close to Red Bull knew better. They understood that Horner wasn't just trying to stabilize the ship. He was sharpening it into a weapon. And for him that meant shedding weight, any weight, no matter how long it had been part of the structure. The message to the rest of the team was deafening. Comfort is over. Familiarity is a liability. This isn't about legacy anymore, it's about dominance. Silent, ruthless, unrelenting dominance. Red Bull doesn't do sentiment. It does results. And under Horner's renewed rule, there would be no room for compromise. And as his second week began, the real changes were only just starting. The simulators were overbooked. Engineering teams were pulling double shifts. Performance engineers found new protocols waiting in their inbox each morning. The cafeteria chatter had gone quiet. The laughter was gone. In its place, a nervous, electrified stillness. Everyone knew the honeymoon was dead. The warpath had begun. And Christian Horner wasn't just back. He was rebuilding Red Bull Racing molecule by molecule, faster, colder, sharper than ever before. Would you like this adapted into a dramatic voiceover script or turned into a high-impact YouTube short? He didn't just return to the team. He returned with fire in his eyes and a ruthless clarity that made it instantly obvious to everyone in the paddock. Christian Horner wasn't coming back to maintain order. He was coming back to burn down everything that no longer served the Red Bull empire. And he didn't waste a second. The moment his plane touched down, internal operations were thrown into a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Departmental silos that had quietly formed in his absence were immediately dismantled. Middle managers, who had become too comfortable making decisions without upper-level accountability, suddenly found themselves stripped of autonomy. Every spreadsheet, every budget item, every vendor contract was re-examined line by line. He didn't delegate the cleanup, he led it. Eyes sharp, phone in hand, notes scribbled not for later, but for immediate execution. No one was safe from scrutiny. No one could hide behind past results. Because to Horner, legacy meant nothing if it couldn't translate into tomorrow's victory. But the changes weren't just structural, they were philosophical. A shift in the team's bloodstream. It began with logistics. Not the glamorous side of racing, but the backbone that determines whether a team arrives at the grid with confidence or chaos. He brought in a new suite of integrated tools, AI-driven optimization software capable of mapping tire warm-up profiles across varying track temperatures in real time. Algorithms designed to predict crew fatigue based on hydration levels, sleep cycles, and workload intensity were implemented without debate. Data now determined everything, from pit crew hydration formulas to travel itineraries for mechanics. Nothing was considered too small, too peripheral, or too mundane to optimize. If it moved, it got evaluated. If it cost time, it got replaced. He issued a direct order to every department: re-justify your existence. Not once. Not weekly. Every day. For the next 30 days, each department head was told to submit daily performance reports outlining contributions, inefficiencies, and actionable solutions. The tone was not collaborative, it was surgical. Performance, not loyalty, would determine who remained standing when the dust settled. One staff member, speaking anonymously, described the atmosphere as like being in a pressure cooker built by an army general with a stopwatch. He addressed the team personally the morning after his arrival. Not through an email. Not on a call. In person, face-to-face, in a room that had gone too long without fear. Complacency is a virus, he said, voice calm but laced with steel. And it ends today. You either fight for this team, or you walk away from it. There was no applause. Just a long silence. The kind that follows a reckoning. And yes, he consulted Verstappen. Because at Red Bull, nothing moves forward without the Dutch ace casting his shadow across it. Sources from within the Verstappen camp confirmed that Horner boarded a private jet late Sunday evening, flying unannounced to a quiet, undisclosed location in southern Europe, where Max and his father Jos had retreated after the race weekend. It wasn't a casual conversation. The atmosphere was reportedly dense, a mix of controlled respect and sharp expectations. Max wasn't looking for apologies, he wanted a plan. A real one. Not vision statements. Not morale boosters. Results. They spoke for over 3 hours. No advisors. No PR handlers. Just the trio. Horner explained his strategy, his clean sweep approach, his zero-tolerance policy for dead weight. He promised structural changes. He promised renewed engineering focus. He promised Verstappen exactly what he craved, an end to the noise, and a return to dominance. The reigning champion listened carefully. And though the final decision had already been made, Horner wanted the nod. He got it. Barely. According to an insider close to Jos Verstappen, Max simply said, "Do what you need to do. But we need wins. Nothing else matters." That wasn't a request. It was a line in the sand. Since that meeting, Horner hasn't stopped moving. He's reportedly set up a war room at Red Bull Racing headquarters, literally a separate floor outfitted with live feed dashboards, driver data overlays, and real-time telemetry pulled from simulators running 24/7. Staff have dubbed it the command tower. It's where decisions now happen. Not in endless committees, but in moments. He doesn't want consensus. He wants results. Engineers from rival teams have quietly admitted the mood is shifting. Red Bull's paddock presence is no longer casual. It's electric. Like a storm is gathering. The air around them feels heavier, more focused, more dangerous. Junior staff are working double shifts without complaint. Lead engineers are sleeping at the factory. Former team members are suddenly being called in for rehiring interviews. There's a sense that the era of calm dominance is over, and something more violent is coming in its place. One technical director described it bluntly: it's like Horner returned with blood in his mouth. Not just to win, but to remind everyone that this is his house. Other teams have taken notice. Aston Martin insiders say their performance division has been told to study every procedural change coming out of Milton Keynes. Mercedes, once indifferent to Red Bull's internal structure, is now quietly compiling intelligence on their logistics overhaul. Even Ferrari, always reluctant to follow anyone's lead, is rumored to be evaluating their own operational timelines after seeing how quickly Red Bull is moving under Horner's revitalized command. Internally, not everyone is comfortable. There are quiet grumbles, concerns about burnout, talk of fear replacing creativity. But no one is quitting. Because even those who dislike the new regime understand the stakes. The team is transforming at a frightening pace. The bar has been raised, and everyone knows the price of falling short. Horner isn't building a comeback, he's orchestrating a purge. A purification of the Red Bull machine from anything soft, hesitant, or stagnant. Every second is accounted for. Every role is provisional. Every race now holds existential weight. He's not speaking to the media. He doesn't need to. The paddock speaks for him. The whispers, the silence, the quickened steps of other team principals when he enters the FIA hospitality tent, all of it says one thing: he's back. And he's not interested in peace. He has convened not one, not two, but 3 high-level confidential off-the-book strategic reviews, each one more intense than the last, held away from the eyes of media, in secure meeting rooms lined with encrypted access protocols and NDAs thicker than a race day fog in Suzuka. These weren't your standard technical debriefs. These were deep dives, borderline forensic audits of every single factor that had led to Red Bull's recent lapses in dominance. Every suspicious simulation misfire, every confused pit wall call, every sudden discrepancy between what the car was supposed to do and what it actually did when rubber hit tarmac. The topics on the table were not up for debate. They were dissected, picked apart with surgical ruthlessness. Upgrade pathways. Real-time GPS overlay. Strategy modeling failures. Driver telemetry inconsistency. Simulator correlation problems. No name was sacred. No department immune. If a sensor flickered in Hungary or a strategy collapsed in Austria, it was put under a magnifying glass the size of Monaco's tabloid appetite. As part of this new internal operation, he has personally greenlit the installation of a dedicated technical liaison, a fixer, a shadow ops specialist, planted between the top floor of the Milton Keynes headquarters and the mobile race operations unit at the paddock. This new figure, whose identity remains undisclosed for now, has one job: eliminate lag. Not internet lag. Not logistical lag. Decision-making lag. The exact kind of delay that cost them seconds in Hungary, allowed Ferrari to undercut them in Spa, and nearly let McLaren snatch podiums when they should have been nursing tires instead of chasing delta time. This individual doesn't report to the usual org chart. They report directly to the top. One name: Christian Horner. If there's even a hint of strategic hesitation, a whiff of conflicting data between factory and track, this liaison intervenes before the signal reaches the driver's ear. Because Horner's message is simple: mistakes are no longer a learning opportunity. They're an infection. And infections get cut out. But it doesn't stop there. Parallel to the technical audit, Horner has ordered a full reconstruction of Red Bull's media infrastructure. No more off-the-cuff post-race interviews that spin out of control. No more Verstappen rants going viral and drowning out the team's official narrative. No more Tsunoda outbursts being meme-ified before the stewards have even finished their notes. A new media communications pipeline is being established from scratch. No external consultants. No PR fluff. This is a firewall designed to reprogram the narrative, control every headline, and push a unified voice across all digital platforms. From the moment a car exits the garage to the final Instagram post after park firm. The goal isn't just damage control. It's narrative dominance. Confidence in the team is no longer just about lap times. It's about optics, authority, stability. And Horner knows better than anyone: if the fans don't believe the team is in control, sponsors won't either. And if the sponsors start looking elsewhere, the empire starts to shake. And then, in the shadows of all this reconstruction, there's the whisper campaign. Inside paddocks and hotel bars, The name keeps surfacing, someone who recently walked away from Brackley under a cloud of mutual disagreement with Toto Wolff. Not a mechanic. Not a data engineer. A strategist. An elite, deeply respected voice in the world of pit stop sequencing, race simulations, and reactive tire gambits. The kind of person who doesn't just react to chaos, they manufacture it for everyone else. Horner, it seems, is making calls. Quiet ones. With no paper trail. The idea is as bold as it is risky. Infiltrate the bloodline of Mercedes' tactical DNA. Inject that winning instinct into Red Bull's own command center before McLaren perfects their sudden rise or Ferrari perfects their late race ambush. It's not about plugging a hole. It's about building a new brain inside an already monstrous machine. And as for Tsunoda, the elephant, or perhaps the firecracker in the room, his situation is now being evaluated under a completely different lens. What was once viewed as youthful volatility is now being interpreted as tactical liability. His radio outbursts, once tolerated as part of his raw energy, have crossed a line too many times, disrupting pit communications, unsettling engineers, even overshadowing the post-race debriefs with emotional noise. The garage is no longer amused. The fans aren't forgiving. And the strategists? They're tired of recalculating tire stints because of over-aggressive sector splits or late-braking optimism into Turn 1. There are murmurs that his seat is no longer guaranteed beyond the next performance review cycle. Not because he lacks speed, he doesn't. Not because he's unpopular, he has a following. But because Red Bull doesn't do sentimentality. They do results. And in a season where strategy, execution, and driver compliance are more important than ever, Tsunoda's unpredictability has started to cost more than it entertains. Internally, a dossier of driver behavior reports has reportedly been compiled. Emotional metrics, engineer feedback, radio escalation frequency, all cross-referenced with performance data. And while no official decision has been made, alternative names are already circulating. Some from within the Red Bull Junior pipeline. Some from outside. Some already in Formula One but eyeing an upgrade. Every option is being gamed out in the background while the public remains distracted by louder headlines. Because behind every move Horner makes, every restructuring, every secret meeting, every whispered call, is a singular philosophy: control the chaos or be consumed by it. And right now, Red Bull is no longer satisfied with surviving the storm. They're redesigning the entire weather system. Christian Horner is no longer operating in the safe zones of corporate diplomacy or PR-controlled interviews. The man who once mastered the political chessboard of Formula One, navigating power struggles, media storms, and inter-team rivalries, is now functioning with a single burning directive: win at all costs. Every decision he makes, every conversation behind the pit wall, every private meeting in the Red Bull motorhome is charged with urgency, pressure, and something far more combustible: personal obsession. The stakes have never been this high. The clock is ticking, the title fight is slipping through their fingers, and Red Bull is suddenly finding itself in a position it hasn't been in for years, chasing instead of leading. Yuki Tsunoda, once the scrappy underdog with flashes of brilliance and a personality made for global marketing, is now under a microscope that few drivers survive unscathed. The margins in Formula One have always been thin, but in 2025, they've become razor-sharp, and Tsunoda is bleeding performance. Internally, the patience is waning. What was once considered raw potential is now being seen as inconsistency bordering on liability. And that liability becomes more glaring when every single lap counts, when every single position lost could tilt the balance in the Constructors' and Drivers' Championships. Horner, sources close to the team reveal, has reached a critical point. The whispers are no longer whispers, they're structured conversations. Not just about performance reviews, but about contingency plans. The word from Milton Keynes is brutal: if Tsunoda doesn't elevate his game, dramatically and immediately, he may not see the inside of that cockpit come the Asian leg of the calendar. Monza, a temple of speed and pressure, may be his last shot. Horner, along with a select inner circle of Red Bull advisors and strategists, has already begun reviewing performance metrics from Red Bull's reserve and academy drivers. Some have already been given private simulator sessions. There are even discussions of fielding one of them for free practice sessions under the guise of future planning, but internally, the intent is far more tactical. Red Bull powertrains will debut as a full-force operation in 2026, and the team cannot afford to carry dead weight, not for technical reasons, and certainly not for emotional or marketing ones. What makes the situation even more explosive is the duality of Horner's motives. This isn't just about correcting a flaw in the racing structure. It's about sending a message to the paddock, to his own organization, and perhaps even to the wider Red Bull Corporation. He's back in control. After a turbulent 2024 full of headlines that had nothing to do with lap times or tire compounds, Horner isn't content to simply stabilize the ship. He wants to redefine the standard. That means reclaiming both titles. That means pushing Verstappen to rediscover his most lethal form. That means erasing any sign of weakness within the garage, the pit wall, and the driver lineup. Anything that doesn't serve the mission is now expendable. And Tsunoda, with all his flashes of speed and crowd-pleasing attitude, is teetering on the edge of that expendability list. It doesn't help that the field has evolved dramatically. McLaren has become a brutal force, Ferrari has built the most cohesive package they've had in nearly a decade, and Mercedes is starting to stitch together consistency and momentum. Red Bull can no longer rely solely on Verstappen's brilliance to compensate for internal fragility. Every decision from here on out must be clinical. And Horner, for all his charm and wit in front of cameras, has always been at his most dangerous when cornered. Behind the scenes, Red Bull's talent pipeline is rumbling. Liam Lawson's name is no longer a future prospect, it's an active file sitting on Horner's desk. Ayumu Iwasa has reportedly caught the attention of Helmut Marko again, while several junior drivers have been receiving advanced telemetry training and increased simulator time. Nothing is being left to chance. The idea is simple: if Red Bull powertrains is to become the core of the next generation, they need a driver lineup that reflects ambition, precision, and reliability. Not unpredictability. Not excuses. And certainly not PR-friendly personalities who buckle under pressure. Marketing teams are reportedly furious. Tsunoda is still considered a valuable asset in the Asian market, particularly in Japan. A mid-season replacement would send shockwaves through the sponsor ecosystem, and executives are already preparing what-if strategies to soften the blow. But Horner, ever the strategist, is betting on performance speaking louder than commercials. If Red Bull goes into Suzuka with a new face and that face performs, the narrative can be flipped instantly, from crisis to masterstroke. The energy within the team is shifting. Verstappen, never one to sugarcoat his views, has remained tight-lipped but noticeably less engaged with Tsunoda in media appearances and debriefs. Whispers suggest he's already voiced his preference for someone more technically aligned with the team's philosophy. Perez, meanwhile, is watching cautiously, knowing that a driver shakeup could alter dynamics in ways that impact him too. Nothing in Red Bull is ever isolated. Horner doesn't want a driver to just finish races. He wants a driver who can attack, adapt, and annihilate when needed. He's not managing a team, he's orchestrating a war. And in war, sentiment is weakness. This isn't just about Tsunoda being on notice. This is about Red Bull drawing a new battle line for 2025 and beyond. Either you're part of the momentum, or you're in the way. Horner has no interest in gently managing decline. He's here to reset the hierarchy, internally and on the grid. And if that means breaking hearts, rewriting roles, and burning through reputation capital to get it done, then so be it. Because for Christian Horner, 2026 isn't just a milestone. It's the battlefield where his legacy will either be reborn or buried. And by the look of things, he's already sharpening the knives. This is not just any man. This is a legend carved from the most unforgiving stone, forged in the fires of pressure, glory, betrayal, and resurrection. He's not merely someone who's been around the sport, he's someone who built it, piece by piece, moment by moment, race by race. He's the kind of man whose fingerprints are imprinted on championship trophies, whose name echoes in the halls of history, whose presence commands attention before he even utters a word. He's created dynasties from nothing, molded fractured teams into unstoppable juggernauts, turned raw chaos into calculated brilliance, and faced both the blinding highs of triumph and the soul-shattering lows of scandal, criticism, and isolation. And yet here he stands once again, staring down the long, brutal corridor of another season. Not with the naive eyes of a dreamer, but with the seasoned, relentless glare of a warrior who's tasted both conquest and collapse and still refuses to surrender. He knows the truth, even if no one else wants to admit it. This might be the end. This could be the last dance, the final curtain call, the closing act of an epic saga that spanned generations. He feels it in his bones, in the silence of early mornings, in the thunder of the crowd, in the glances exchanged behind garage doors and whispered meetings in glass offices. The team he once built? It's changed. The faces are newer, younger, less scarred, less battle-hardened. The names on the uniforms, the voices on the radios, they aren't the same ones who stood beside him in the golden days. Some of the loyalty is gone. Some of the trust was left behind in the ashes of past betrayals. But that doesn't matter. Not to him. Because while the walls may have been repainted and the engines retuned, one thing remains untouched, unbroken, undimmed: the hunger in his eyes. It's still there, feral, raw, and electric. The fire never left. It just got quieter, more strategic, more focused. He doesn't need applause anymore. He doesn't need to prove anything to the world. What he needs, what he craves, is one more shot. One more run. One more war to fight and win on his own terms. He believes in the impossible, not because it's poetic, but because he's made it happen before. He looks at this fractured season like a master thief eyes a vault, with absolute clarity and terrifying intention. He knows they're underdogs. He knows the odds are stacked, the analysts have written them off, and the fans have turned their attention elsewhere. Let them. Let them mock. Let them sleep on him. Because while they laugh, he's already working, burning the midnight oil, dissecting weaknesses like a surgeon, erasing excuses, setting traps, plotting comebacks, and lighting every ounce of doubt on fire. He doesn't just want to win, he wants to steal the season. He wants to pull off the kind of comeback that becomes legend, the kind of turnaround that breaks the hearts of rivals and ignites the souls of believers. He wants to hear the silence of stunned paddocks. He wants to feel the moment where everyone who doubted him realizes they should have never counted him out. He's not here to play it safe. He's not here to reminisce or collect sympathy. He's here to destroy fragility, to erase complacency, to torch every crack and fracture until only steel remains. Every weakness, emotional, mechanical, strategic, will be hunted down and annihilated with ruthless precision. He won't just patch the holes, he'll rebuild the armor. This man, at this moment, is more dangerous than ever. Because he has nothing left to prove, and everything left to fight for. Because when legacy and mortality collide, something truly terrifying is born. A man who will stop at nothing, risk it all, and burn every bridge if it means crossing the finish line one last time. Not as a shadow of who he was, but as the fiercest version of himself the world has ever seen.